We need to talk about Ransom Riggs. You know, for the longest time I thought that was a pseudonym. I looked it up. It's not. His name is Ransom Riggs, which sounds either like a character from the series of unfortunate events, or maybe one of Daniel Handler's concoctions before he decided on Lemony Snicket. It's not. It's his real name. So first I would like to congratulate Ransom Riggs' parents for creating the best star pilot name that has never been used in canon in the Star Wars universe. And second, I want to give the Star Wars writers a good idea for a star pilot name. Ransom Riggs. It's a cool name. The second thing we need to talk about is Miss Peregrine's. Need to because we haven't talked about it enough. Well, I haven't talked about it enough. It's on me. It's my responsibility. I don't know how on earth I managed it, seeing as I consider it one of the best young adult fiction series out there, but I have not recognized it nearly enough. It seriously deserves way more recognition, so I apologize for that. What was I thinking? I wasn't. So allow me to try to make up for it by gushing about the series obnoxiously for the next little bit. From the impressively unique story, to the use of the both compelling and relatable prose of Jacob, Miss Peregrine's truly does stand out amongst other young adult fiction. It really, really does. I honestly don't think you will find anything much like it amongst the rows and rows of supernatural stories you've come to know in young adult fiction. There's something so charming, but at the same time so insidious about Miss Peregrine's. There's a great deal of history involved in these stories, which gives them this sort of unique texture. The pictures add this disconcerting realness that doesn't allow for the common detachment between reader and story. And there's something so absolutely genuine about Jacob's point of view. It makes you feel like a human being is telling you, and you personally, a story, not a character. A person. Now, I'm not saying that the books are completely without fault. They aren't. In fact, one of my biggest complaints about the series is that, well, I kind of wish it wasn't a series. To me, there's something so disarmingly charming about the first book that if Riggs had just lengthened the novel and expanded the plot and dilemma, we could have been left with a really unique and singular story from beginning to end. Something that began with mystery and ended with a little bit of mystery, if you know what I mean. That's not to say I didn't like the series, but my opinion is that I think it would have ended better as a single, enchanting novel. That's just me. Because what we get left with is amazing first book, second book that's pretty good but loses its edge, and then another really great book, but only in so much as it is preceded by the previous books. I don't remember if I reviewed Hollow City, so let's backtrack a second. I absolutely gushed about the first Miss Peregrine's back in the day. Because, and I still feel this way, I think it is a fabulous book and an outstanding example of clever writing and unprecedented storytelling that other young adult authors especially should strive for. Then Hollow City came out, and I liked Hollow City. In terms of writing, it's solid. But the problem with extending the peculiar universe both by width and length so quickly is that we lose a bit of the mystery and a lot of the edge. There was something so eerie about the first Miss Peregrine's and the children that Jacob comes to know and love. I loved the unique conversation it brought up about familial ties and how they affect a person. And the initial story really nailed the concept of answering questions with answers that warranted additional questions, which, and this is it, this is the big difference between an annoying novel that doesn't answer any questions ever and this kind of novel, with questions that didn't always necessarily need answering. So I guess Hollow City and Library of Souls are books for people who wanted more answers, which is totally fine. There's a fly up here, it's driving me bananas. It's one of those fat flies that makes a lot of noise, and when it lands it goes... You can hear it. It's like landing a raisin on paper. Isn't your life over in like 2 minutes? Just die. But because of this, I think we lose a bit of that subtle ghoulishness in Hollow City in place of outright horror with the freaky hollows and such. And I think it depends on the reader, but for me, I felt like the eerie atmosphere was kind of lost in a quick, inconsistent plot with a whole bunch of new characters and places that come and go very quickly and we don't really understand. And I mean, there's a talking dog, so. Now, you can look at this two ways. The reason I wouldn't necessarily call this a fault of writing is because in the peculiar universe, anything kinda goes. You meet new people, you leave. You meet new people, you leave. You run through this portal, you run through this portal. It's just kind of all over the place, and it's actually one of the things I like best about the universe, and here I am kind of complaining about it. So I think it really depends on the reader. In other words, I don't really think that Riggs did any kind of injustice to his universe. I just think that maybe it's a universe with many parts kind of left up to the imagination. But hey, who knows? I actually loved this series, so maybe I'm just flat out wrong. So what happens in Library of Souls is, in my opinion, Riggs does the right thing. He doesn't hold back in embracing the ridiculous whimsy of his worlds. He milks it for all it's worth. He gets all metaphysical with it. He goes all out. And again, despite everything I've said, it was the best way to go out. Anything else would have felt half-done and hesitant. This novel was a plethora of peculiar whimsy. I mean, the very essence of these books is the fantastical use of time, death, love, and life. Basically, Riggs plays with enough fire to burn down an entire forest to ashes and still manages not to get singed. Because when you're not writing an outwardly fantasy novel, or, even when you are, you have to be so careful with the metaphysical. Souls, life, and death, these are the things you write about that can disastrously shatter a story into tiny, unsalvageable pieces. Because when you get into stuff like this, you're wandering through a frickin' minefield. You've got to avoid Deus Ex Machina. You're juggling the very concept of mortality. You have to re-establish just what death is in your story and just what death means. Except for very rare exceptions, and et cetera, et cetera. In other words, it's deep stuff that takes a lot of planning, so you don't really want to just touch on the fact that you've got an ancient library full of ancient peculiar souls, hanging out in an ancient loop, in an ancient time. And Riggs does a phenomenal job delivering here. We get just the right amount of answers we need to give a crap, and just the right amount of answers that things make sense, paired with the good old-fashioned mystery of Miss Peregrine's that Riggs gets to lean back on. So despite my wish that this would have been a one-book thing, in the end, I think this last book really did the overall fantastic, ghoulish, creepy, cool, amazing, wonderful feeling of the peculiar universe justice. Plot-wise, this book doesn't seem to have the same problems that I think Hollow City had. We need to go here. Here. And here's this character. Just kidding. This character is important. Oh, just kidding. Which loop are we in? Where are we going again? I'm not sure if I'm the only one who felt this way, but as much as I liked Hollow City, and despite everything I'm saying, I promise I did, I didn't quite get the point of it sometimes. Looking back, I feel like it was much more a means to an end. That is, Jacob learning to control hollows, than an actual comprehensive and constructive plot to me, but hey, what do I know? So I was pretty nervous about Library of Souls after we were left off in Hollow City. But I liked this plot better this time around, and I appreciated its extensive exploration of peculiar life in the scummy loop. Like, people buying out drugged-up peculiars for, their personal uses, and peculiars abusing other peculiars, and how peculiar communities and even human communities communicated, and the history of the loops, and a lot of things that probably should have been in book 2, okay? Like, don't get me wrong, I loved this book. But did anyone else feel like this long, all-encompassing look at the darker side of peculiar life would have been better spread out? We get a little bit of it in Hollow City, but I felt a little bit chipped by the touch-and-go manner we touched on Alma's past, and her brothers, and the loops. Like, what the heck? That was so important. Why are we just now talking about this? But here's the payoff. Amazing characters. Amazing hollow fights. What more can a girl ask for? I'm a huge fan of all the characters, but I honestly think at the end of this 3-book series, Jacob is my favorite. Because I am such a huge fan of the way he tells the story. He kind of reminds me of Ethan Waite from Beautiful Creatures. Another wonderfully self-aware, but still appropriately ignorant and frightened of the supernatural character. Despite some of his failings, Jacob remains consistently authentic. I love his little quips, his concerns, his comments, his strengths and his weaknesses. Peregrine's is full of wonderful, well-rounded characters, but but I feel that we tend to overlook Jacob and his fantastic narration of these books. Also, wow, I'm a huge fan of the romance in these books. It's clear that Jacob and Emma are seriously into each other, but their relationship isn't just this empty whirlwind of physical intimacy. They respect each other, they help each other, they carry each other along in hard times. For heaven's sakes, they seem to actually like each other. I don't mean to keep comparing, but gosh, there's a lot of young adult fiction books where I'm like, whoa, are you guys even friends? You seem to just fight and make out. I mean, and they argue, sure. They don't agree on everything, which is realistic, but no argument is totally relationship incinerating, or just serves as romantic drama. Riggs isn't just shoehorning some fierce romance in that weighs the story down. It's actually really well executed and meaningful to the story. Hooray! So as far as I know, Riggs only has a handful of works so far, but I hope that he's planning on continuing to write, and I'm really looking forward to what happens next with him. He's a seriously talented writer with a knack for atmosphere and a dedication to world building that I wish could be applied to the young adult genre as a whole, to book writing, fiction as a whole. A lot of love and care went into these books. It's clear. It's clear in every line, it's clear in every character, it's clear in every picture. And I am so happy that I got to read these books. These books are amazing. It is so fun to watch it blow up right now. All my friends are reading it, relatives are reading it, and it's just well done, Ransom Riggs, the best star pilot in the galaxy. You deserved this. And now there's a movie coming out with Tim Burton as the director, and I'm excited, worried, but excited. That's just pretty usual for any book to movie adaptation. But no matter what happens with the movie or movies or whatever, I will always love this series. I'm really going to miss the story, the characters, and just, I wish I could go back in time and read that first book for the first time. That was a really special reading experience for me. It's not rare that I read books I like, but it is very rare that I am totally swept off my feet. So thank you. Thank you, Ransom Riggs, for writing these. I love these books, and if you guys haven't read them yet, I highly recommend that you do. And please let the movie be good. Bye!